Good afternoon, friends. This is Blake from Floating Gardens, and I am going to share the Laurie greenhouse project with you here. So this is kind of a introduction to what we're going to try and achieve over at John's house. Now you saw um, with the last video kind of what the site looked like. It's just an empty area with a bunch of weeds and that kind of stuff. But this is what's going to be there. So this view, and I'll rotate it in a minute, I'll show you everything, don't worry. It's like a hidden surprise for now. This view is looking at it from the southwest. So the sun will rise in this direction and it'll come up and then it'll set down this direction here. The house that we're attaching to is right over here, and the roof that comes off of it will stay about a foot away from the greenhouse, but that's still very close. So this is almost like a lean-to, except it will be freestanding on its own. We'll be probably doing a concrete slab after much discussion. And you know, once the frame is welded together, I'll anchor it to the slab and get started on putting the polycarbonate up. But for now, this is what it's going to look like. And we're going to be using a method that will not require a sump, which is a big deal to me. So let's have a look at how this is going to work. Obviously we have our vents here. The greenhouse footprint is about 12 by 24. We'll have a few vents in the top, and of course we'll be using plenty of positive pressure airflow to make sure that we can direct the heat outward. But this is kind of what it's going to look like. So here we sit, and I'll walk you through this. Of course, this will be the fish tank here. It's going to be elevated because we want a head height that's above most of what we're going to be doing. The goal is going to be to gravity feed our grow beds. So I might even have to lift this up a couple feet, but the grow beds aren't going to be very high. John's fiance is not a very tall woman. I want to make sure it's easy for her to get into the grow beds as well. So that's actually beneficial to us because we won't have to lift the fish tank as high, and it'll be easy for guys like me to get into the fish. Okay, so I saw a couple comments on the YouTube thing, and I wanted to address an email I got. Number one, fish don't need light. So this part of the greenhouse here, this wall here, is going to be opaque. Just this area. You know, we want to make sure that the sun isn't, you know, using radiant heat to warm up the water and kill our fish, but we also don't want to let light get in there because we don't want algae to be a problem. Okay, so over here is more like a seedling growing table, and underneath, you know, we have shelves and stuff like that for the various tools and what we need. Underneath the fish tank here, aside from the fact that this is not going to be a cylinder, it'll be conical, so it'll kind of slightly slope down here. It's easier for the solids to collect in the middle that way. And right in the center of the tank we'll use what's called an airlift pump. Basically you pump air instead of water, and as the bubbles rise it forces the water to rise with it. I will be showing extensive video footage of how we take care of that when we get there. But for now, this is a 250-gallon fish tank. It's more than is necessary for a greenhouse this size, but again, you know, we're in Phoenix here. So we want to put more water in the system to help when it comes to regulating temperature and make room for a water chiller if necessary here. We'll probably shade screen over the top as well, but the vents will be fine for now. And we'll be using 2 grow beds, but they're going to be split into 4 segments. So once we pump the air into the fish tank and it forces a solids lift, you know, there's a very similar structure called a solids lifting overflow that is designed specifically to pick up junk off the bottom of our fish tank here. What's that little guy doing in there? As in fish poop, and bring it somewhere else. Well, with an airlift pump, it is a solids lifting overflow, but with a little bit of different fluid dynamics involved. Not too different, not too bad. It won't be that scary, I promise. But as we pump out of the, pump is the wrong word. As we use a solids lifting overflow, airlift pump will be used later for this. It'll gravity feed into these 4 grow beds. Now we will be using constant flow, because if you're using a sump and you're not using constant flow, you will experience significant changes in head height in the fish tank, and that's not good for your fish. Some people draw their fish tank to like half size and they wonder why their fish seem to randomly die later down the road. If you can keep the water level, excuse me, if you could keep a constant water level, that's one less variable to be concerned with. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it's nice to not have to dig a hole and put in the sump. I don't think it's going to be necessary for this system. We should be okay with our water volume being at constant flow. So here is how it's going to go. As these are gravity fed, an indexing valve will take turns filling and emptying. So the water will continuously pour out of the fish tank and it'll go into a grow bed, but the indexing valve will shift every 15 minutes to a different grow bed. Okay, so every 15 minutes a new bed starts up and fills up while the other one drains. This indexing valve, basically it has one pipe coming in that pumps water, and then on a timer it'll switch its output to one of numerous different directions. So for me, of course, we're just going to use the 4. And what this will allow us to do is use constant flow. So if we put that in, we'll fill a grow bed. Each segment of a grow bed is about 112 gallons. So we're going to need to fill it in 15 minutes to do 4 times that. So 112 times 4 is 448. So 450 gallons per hour pump size so far requirement. Okay, and once this fills, and by the way, these are 18-inch grow beds, but you're only going to have about 14 inches of gravel in there, and then we'll maybe fill 12 inches of it. So about, let's have a peek here. Let's see if I can show something like this. 6 feet by 12 inches. That is the water height. Okay, so we will do a couple inches of gravel on top of that because you don't want to get a bunch of the gross bacteria that are floating around in the air to latch onto wet rock. And we'll use a little bit more of a lip just to, you know, keep things nice and kosher. Keep us from having to worry about overflow or anything like that. Now, if the tank is pouring an overflow, that is totally fine. It's totally fine because we will use a standpipe. It'll look something like this. I'll put in a random thing real quick here to show you. Say it's 1 inch in size and it comes out. Oh, I see what you're going to do. I'm going to have to come over to it. Comes out like this. Okay, and it'll just sit at the height that we want the water at. And what that will do is basically anytime the water tries to rise above that level, it'll just pour into the standpipe here and it'll flow back to our fish tank or wherever I deem it necessary for it to go. So for us, it'll be no problem. We definitely want to overpump or overflow rather than underflow. Very important. Okay, so every 15 minutes we will have one grow bed fill up, and then it'll turn off and the index valve will move over to the next zone. When it does that, a drain will allow the water to slowly flow out. So we'll do something like 15-minute fill and maybe like a 5, maybe 10-minute drain time. I don't want it to go too fast, but you know, I think a 5-minute drain time is fine. I prefer to fill it slow and drain it quickly because the worms that will be in the grow beds need time to climb up to the top of the grow bed, and then they need to be able to get back down. So the way red wigglers work, and this is important because they're going to be the big part of the solids breakdown for this system. The way red wigglers work is they're extremely hardy. You can do a lot of stuff with them. They don't mind water. They will try and avoid it, but they can live underwater for quite a while. The reason we want to fill it slow is because I want to encourage the worms to make their way back to the top of the grow bed, and then as it drains quickly, the worms will move as fast as they can back down to the bottom. So when we have sludge collect in these things over the years, the worms will be working on that, but we want to make sure that none of that is happening in the top 12 inches. The bottom couple inches will eventually get gunky and will have to be cleaned out, but it'll be a once a year kind of chore, and it doesn't take much to dig that stuff out. You know, it takes maybe an hour, so it's not that big deal. Not that big of a deal. Anyway, as the indexing valve is going around these 4 grow beds here, we're going to also be powering our hydroponic towers. And I say hydroponic towers, but of course they're going to be aquaponic towers. Okay, and what these represent are the towers that we're going to be getting from Aquaponics Thailand. If Robert gets a hold of me this week sometime soon, we're hoping to see them come in June. So June 1st is, you know, my best bet to install these, but hopefully we'll have everything else done at that time. The flow rate on these is kind of debatable. I've been told that 10 liters a minute is fine. That seems like a lot to me. What is that in gallons? That would be 2.6 gallons per minute. Like, that's a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when I do 2.6 gallons a minute and then 6 towers, that's 15 gallons a minute. That would be 900 gallons an hour. So that's twice the water flow expectation of the grow beds. I'm not really interested in pushing that much water through them. I don't think that's necessary. I'm going to do about half that. So the plan is to use a 450 gallon per hour pump, whatever that means when it comes to our airlift pump, to power these towers. So we will actually pull from where we choose to drain our aquaponics beds. So it'll be something like this. Let's just say something like that. Have a little something here like that. It'll be a lot taller, of course, but where the beds drain to. From the drain spot, and it doesn't have to be underground, we don't need a sump, we can put it surface mounted. In fact, I might put it underneath the fish tank. We'll use our air pump or airlift pump to power these towers. And there's a reason I want to do that. Very important reason, actually. I want all water to travel through the grow beds before it goes into these towers. So this is going to be in series, not parallel. Water will flow. If you're a water molecule, you start here in the fish tank. It'll move into grow bed number 1 or 2, 3, or 4, depending on whatever the index valve is currently on. Let's say it just moves into the first grow bed here, and then it will drain. And when it drains out, it'll come down here. And from here, or wherever I've drained it to, we will use the airlift pump to put it into these towers. Now, it's okay to have a pretty shallow one. In fact, like, let's say, just for s and giggles, that I put another small collector underneath the fish tank. Say something like that. If I offset it a little bit, I can just have our airlift portion come out next to this tank here, and it would look something like this. Come right through, and it'll be pretty tall like this. In fact, it might even go through the roof of the greenhouse. That would be totally fine, but it would look something like this. And from this collection bin, the airlift pump will suck any water that's in the system down there and put it into the top of these towers and allow it again to be gravity fed. So for us, it's going to be all about allowing water to enter the grow beds, then drain back down onto something that's just sitting in the ground, not underground, so we can keep the concrete slab as a nice whole rectangle solid piece. Pump it up into these towers here and let that drain. Okay, I'm thinking it's possible to do it all from the fish tank. I'm not 100% comfortable with doing that just yet, but I think that it's doable. We're going to find out. I'm going to be doing some experiments with the airlift pump design later in the month, and we'll see if it's true. But the short version is it goes from the fish tank to the grow beds. After it leaves the grow beds, it goes into the towers. So wherever my standpipe drains to is where we're going to pump into this, and that'll feed all of our shallow root stuff. This will help prevent solids from getting into our hydroponic towers. It's not going to be that big a deal, but it is something that we're going to do. Another option is to see if the solids are going to cause a problem in the towers. If they turn out not to be a problem, which would be a little surprising to me, um, our best bet might be to just pull one pipe out of here and have it split, and we'll do 450 gallons an hour in each direction. So like put in a T here and have the index valve feed these in a circle and have the other end of the T feed these. Still kind of in a debate about that. I'm not sure if I want to allow solids into the towers. There are small openings in those, and it just seems like it could cause a problem. Once you get roots in there, pardon me. Once you get roots in there, it's a struggle. But this is not bad. This will be what, 24 by 12, so it's just under 300 square feet in size. The entrance right here is very close to their back door, so that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish there. And you want to make sure that you leave at least a good 30 inches of room to walk between things. The towers aren't actually cylinders, right? They're actually very small, and then they just have outreaching branches that the cups will grow your plants from. So there's a little more room than it appears here, but that's plenty to walk around. You got to give yourself the respect to allow space to get between stuff. So this is the short version of what we're going to do. I'll get more into detail about how exactly we decide to feed the system, but it will, without question, be constant flow. I don't want the head height on our fish tank moving, and if we can do it without a sump, that's something that I'm very interested in. We might have to, it depends on how well these airlift pumps work. I'm building one this weekend myself to play with it, just to make sure that it's as good as the physics say it is. But I would much prefer to put them in series. I'd much prefer to put them in series. And by the way, for those of you who do use worms, if you got extra ones, feel free to grind them up into some blood meal and throw it right into the water. Your plants will love it. It sounds a little cruel, I know, but it is what it is, right? Okay, well, here is your sort of precursor short design. It'll change as we go. Everything always does, but this is what we're going to walk in doing. And the greenhouse will be surrounded by a polycarbonate, so this will all be clear. I just opened up half of it and closed the other half so you can see the system a little bit better. But I really like doing this kind of thing. I like the idea of combining media beds and towers a lot. The towers give you more for your space, and the media beds kind of act as a biofilter and a grow space at the same time. Also, he will be able to grow heavier, denser, thicker, and larger crops in the grow beds, and then smaller stuff like your leafies right here in the towers. So there's a lot of benefits to what's going on here, and I think once it all kind of goes into place, everyone will sort of understand that. Now, when it comes to the electrical, John has a solar water heater. It's a manifold, if those of you know if those of you know what that is, are watching today. If not, you'll see it soon, but basically it's just a bunch of pipes. They go out in the sun, and the sun heats up water as it passes through the pipes and then goes back into the system. So that'll be a nice heater thing, and we'll try and do the opposite for a chiller. Why not just have to throw a chiller in the fish tank? It's not that big a deal. Or we might have to do a small secondary tank and put the chiller in there. We'll just have to see what the water temperatures are looking like. We'll definitely have to throw fans in here. That's the other thing that people kind of forget about and miss, is you got to get proper airflow in these systems. It's nice to have the water cool the air down, but we might need to use some drastic action. We might need to connect a hose and put in a mister up at the top of the greenhouse here. It gets 110 in the summer, you guys, and although the crops can handle it, the fish can't. So we just have to make sure that no light gets to the fish. Maybe use a mister on the roof of the greenhouse if necessary to help cool it down or to help disperse light a little bit. We'll put a shade screen down. You got to have fans inside the greenhouse that are blowing air out of these vents. The air will find its own way in, I promise. This isn't supposed to be airtight. We might even, the greenhouse is designed to where this can all come apart. So it's very likely that what we'll do is we'll make it so that we can detach like the bottom 2 feet of polycarbonate and pull it out and leave this open where the top part will remain glass. So air can be sucked in the bottom and go out the top to allow heat to escape. Okay. I think that's enough of a teaser for now. I mean, we're ready to build this stuff, guys. I just wanted you to see what's going on. Okay, bye-bye.